bring the heel in as much as you can. If the knee hurts, then don't bring the foot in so far. And push your heel down and your knee forward to increase flexion in the ankle. At the same time, you can hold the knee with your hands and pull against that to help tip the pelvis more forward or to get the pelvis more upright. And stretch the right leg in such a way as to help you to upright the pelvis. And stretch out your left leg. Bend the right as much as your knee will let you. Make sure that the heel still is touching the floor. It doesn't have to be heavy, but you want to be able to make contact there. And then push the heel down, stretch the knee forward. Increase the bend at the ankle as much as you can. And you can pull against that with your arms. So the knee's moving forward, you're pulling against that pressure and tipping the pelvis more forward. Stretching the left leg in a way that helps you to do that better. Breathe into the lower abdomen, particularly on the right side. If your lower abdomen makes contact with your leg, you can think of breathing into that inner upper right thigh. That's helpful. And then switch the legs around once more. Start the same way. Then bring your right hand just outside your hip here as a support. Bring your left arm inside your left knee. And then reach for the leg or the ankle or even the big toe of that foot. And then once you've caught hold of whatever you can catch hold of it's gonna bend your low back a little bit here, so make sure that you're not overdoing that. But then once you have hold of something, bring the chin in, lift the crown of the head up, and upright the upper spine as much as you can. And you should feel some of the action of the pose shift from your low back into your left leg and hip. And it's going to particularly challenge that left ankle, so be a little bit cautious about that, especially if the ankle's vulnerable. And release that, switch legs. Then the left hand can come down. If you want to support, you can use another block or a half dome. Then bring the right hand inside the knee. And so you're just reaching out to see what you can catch hold of without forcing anything. And then once you've got hold of something, be it your lower leg or your foot or your big toe, then pull the chin in, lift the crown of the head, upright the upper spine, And that will help to bring the spine into a more neutral position. And it'll redirect the load from your low back more into your right hip and right leg, right foot and ankle. And you can release that, stretch out that leg, and come off the block. Just a quick boat pose here. Head back. And then side sitting on the left. And then unweight that hand, weight the hip, bring the hand forward, come onto the forearm and then onto your back. Go to 3 months supine. And then look back to the left, bring the left arm down, and go back to side sitting with the right hand down alongside the hip. And then you're going to bend, rotate, reach that arm, lift the pelvis, step the right foot around, bring the left knee over, come up into the lunge. And then bring the left hand down, step the right foot back, plant that right foot, slide the left knee forward, bring the left hip down, so you're back to side sitting. And then go back to supine. And then once more to the left, same sequence. Side sitting, reaching, lifting, stepping, coming up into the lunge. And then reversing that back to side sitting. And then Shavasana. Any variation here, so feet down, feet up, legs straight. Then side sitting on the right. To supine. And then back to the right, head, arm, side sitting, left hand down alongside the hip. You're bending, rotating, reaching, lifting, stepping the left foot, right knee over, come up into your lunge. And we're going to reverse that, right hand down, left foot back, plant that foot, slide the right knee forward to bring the hip down, and go back to supine. And repeat that to the right once more. So our head, arm, side sitting, and reaching, lifting, stepping, right knee over, uprighting. Good. Then sitting back toward the right heel, careful of the knee here. Come forward into that left hip. And uprighting. Sitting back. Shifting forward. Make sure that the upper back doesn't hunch forward here. Uprighting. step the left foot back. So you're in quadruped. And then bring the hands a little more forward to kneeling plank. So push down, really lift the upper spine and head away from the floor. Breathe into the low back. Release the glutes. Relax the tailbone. Activate the abdominal muscles. And then squat back from there. Keep the spine neutral. Keep the lower abdominals activated. And then back to kneeling plank. So if you already feel fairly challenged with this kneeling plank, stick with that. If you want to make it a little bit more interesting, bring the knees a little bit more forward, inch or two, and then pull the chest forward, lift the crown of the head forward and upward, and extend the upper part of the spine. So you're doing a kind of an upward dog here, but with the knees on the floor. And then you're going to backtrack that, the knees move back. You neutralize the spine in kneeling plank, and then squat back from there. So one more of those, kneeling plank, and then either just holding that or knees a little more forward. Pull the spine through the arms, lift, extend, and then back to the kneeling plank for a moment, and then squatting back from there. And then forward again to kneeling plank. So I'll throw in one more variation here. A little more challenging still. You lift your knees off the floor, and now the knees are free, so you can push with your toes a little and go into the upward facing dog that way. And then back to a full plank or kneeling plank, either one. And then from full plank you can go to downward facing dog. And then come back down into quadruped. Then step the right foot forward and come upright. So you're in the lunge with your right foot forward. Arms forward. And then being careful with the left knee to not overload that. Keeping the spine neutral, you're sitting back toward the heel. And then shifting forward, straight forward into the tripod. Uprighting. Sitting back. Shifting forward. Uprighting. Sitting back. Shifting forward. Then you can step into quadruped. Toes under, come up into bear. Reach with the arms, push, stretch, then walk in, squat for a moment. Good. Take your right foot on your half dome. And then we'll add a forward bend here with your knees straight. And you want to open up the low back. So keep the spine neutral, but make sure that you're not gripping the lumbar spinal muscles too strongly, which will feel like it's compressing your low back, like you've got too much tension, too much pressure there. So you want to release that pressure if you can, and then come up. Good. And then the left side, or the left forefoot. So again, going forward. And so what often needs to happen is, even though ultimately to do the forward bend, your pelvis has to tip forward. If it tips forward more than your rib cage, then you get that hyperextension in the lumbar, which doesn't feel good. So if you just tip the pelvis back until you feel the low back open up, and then activate your abdominals, activate your diaphragm, use your intra-abdominal pressure to support your back from the front. Once you have that support and everything's working as a team, then you can increase the bend from the hips. And come up from there. Good. So let's try this forward bend without the half dome. And this time I want you to look for what is your end range here before you start rounding your low back. So I can go much further than this if I just bend from my low back, but what's my end range before that happens? That's what I want to find out. And then once I'm at that place, I should be able to make that adjustment. Really should have done that from the beginning. That keeps my back safe. And then I'm going to bend my knees to bring my hands toward the floor or even onto the floor. Okay, and then to come up, I'm just going to reverse that. Straighten the knees and then lift the pelvis and the trunk upright. Take a couple breaths. And repeat that. So forward bend with straight knees. Hip hinging, stabilizing the low back, finding end range, then bending the knees, so adding a squatting motion to bring the hands down. And then coming back to the forward bend with straight knees and then uprighting out of it from there. Good. Stand with your feet pelvis width. Stretch your arms to the sides. And as you reach out, rotate the arm out and widen the chest. But even more than that, widen your upper back. So try to reach in such a way that it pulls the shoulder blade out with the hand. So you you want to widen the chest, but you want to widen the upper back even more than that. Then keep that very wide upper back, chest, shoulder girdle. Inhale. As you exhale, lower the arms, bend the elbows, join your palms. So when you bring your hands to Namaste, you still feel that very wide open upper back and chest. Then you're going to lift the arms. You can separate the hands here. You're going to lift the arms and reach up. And as you reach up, really try to minimize the lift of the ribs. Try to keep the ribs down as you lift the arms up. And then go ahead and bring your hands back to, arms back to Namaste. And then release the arms. Good, so I'm going to show this from the side. So you're going to reach out. And as you reach out, I want you to think of widening not just the space between the shoulder blades, but also the space below the shoulder blades in the mid-back. And as you open up that space, let the lower front ribs release back into that space. Then bring the hands, arms to Namaste, keeping the back wide, keeping the chest wide. You're using, meanwhile, this palm pressure to help to increase that lateral opening of the shoulder girdle. Then when you lift the arms, the ribs are already in position, so as you lift the arms, maintain the rib position, and then you should feel like the stretch you get is in that outer part of the chest near the armpit, maybe even in the armpit. So you're reaching, but without lifting the ribs up. And then back to Namaste. And then release the arms. All right, so we're going to combine the last two sequences into one. So widen, ribs in, hands to Namaste, exhale. Reaching upward, inhale. So the arms come down into your sides and you're hip hinging, bending forward. To your end range, then bending your knees, bringing your hands down. Then back to the straight knee posture. Then coming up, lifting the arms. Inhale, and then exhale to Namaste. And then release the arms. Right? And then we're going to add the previous sequence to that. So arms to the sides, widen, release the ribs in, exhale, Namaste, inhale, reaching up. You can start to lift your eyes up a little, look toward the hands, try to do that more with your eyes, less with your head and neck. And then back to Namaste, and then into the forward bend. And then adding the squat, bring the hands down. And then going back into bear. Knees down, kneeling plank. Knees a little forward, upward facing dog. Feel free to skip that part if it hurts. Back to the kneeling plank. And then squatting back from there. And then forward into quadruped, up into bear, walking in, coming all the way up, reaching the arms, and then back to Namaste and release the arms. Good. So once more, widen, inhale, exhale, hands to Namaste. Reaching up, inhale. Exhale, forward bend, then bend the knees, and go to bear, then kneeling plank, then upward dog, then kneeling plank, squatting back, then quadruped, bear. You can walk the feet to the hands, come up into the forward bend, come up, reach the arms up, namaste, release the arms. And if we want to add a little more challenge, inhale, exhale, namaste, inhale, exhale, forward, bend the knees, bear, then kneeling plank, then full plank to upward dog, back to plank, and then to downward facing dog. Then bend the knees, walk the feet in, then straighten the knees, lift the trunk, stretch the arms up, inhale, exhale, namaste, and release the arms. And then last one, inhale, widen the chest, exhale, namaste, inhale, reach up, lift the eyes, exhale, forward, bend the knees, step the feet back, bear, kneeling plank, full plank if you're doing that, into upward facing dog, back to plank, either variation, to downward facing dog, bend the knees, bear, walk in, neutral spine, straight knees, lift, reach the arms, inhale, exhale, back to namaste, and then release the arms. Good, so we're going to do a forward bend with hand support. You should be pretty warmed up, but take whatever you need. You can go forward the same way, but this time try to keep your knees straight as you bring your hands down onto the support rather than going lower and bending your knees. Keep the knees straight and try to go lower by extending the spine further out and gradually further down. So the crown of my head is reaching out in front of me and toward the floor. And as it does, it pulls the whole spine with it. And gradually that angle changes. And little by little, the crown of my head is reaching straight down toward the floor in front of my feet. So if that deep of a forward bend is premature for you, then you can stay much higher and focus more on just trying to get the hamstrings and the hips to train the hamstrings and the hips to work, to be able to go deeper into the posture from there. Your thigh bones are rotating out. Sit bones will come a little bit together when that happens. Then the pelvic floor activates. And then once the pelvic floor is active, then lengthen your hamstrings by lifting the sit bones up. Widen the pelvic floor by pulling the sit bones wider apart. But don't let go of the outward rotators in your hips. Keep rotating the thigh bones out as you do that. Breathe into the low back, breathe into the lower abdomen. Keep uprighting the upper spine, don't let it hunch forward. Let eyes, ears, tongue soften. Good, and then come all the way up. Take a little time to let your breath recover here. Good. Triangle pose. Arms forward, knees bent. Step or hop the feet. Take a wide stance. Upright the pelvis. Make sure you're uprighting and not pushing your hips, not swinging your hips out in front of your knees here. And then align your feet to your right. Knees are still a little bit bent. Thigh bones are still rotating out. Then stretch the legs, stretch the arms, lift up the spine, inhale. Exhale, bend from the right hip. Reach down. And then upright and turn the head. And connect that uprighting of the head with the stretch of the back leg. And as you turn, keep releasing the right buttock toward the left foot. Don't let the right buttock bunch up into the low back here. Keep releasing that, opening up that right side of the low back. Push the right big toe down, pull the kneecap and the quadriceps up. Try to go a little lower. Good, and then reach with the top arm to come up. Reverse the arms, reverse the legs. So you can set up the other side again with a little bit of bend in the knees, highlighting that outward rotation of your hips again. And then straighten the knees, stretch the arms, lift up the crown of the head, but drop the shoulder blades down the back. Inhale, as you exhale, bend from the left hip, reach down. And then upright and turn the head around to the right. Try to connect that uprighting action to the stretch of the back leg. Press the left big toe down, pull up on the left kneecap and the quadriceps. Tighten that knee. Release the left buttock toward the right heel. So a lot of what you do in this posture keeps referencing that back foot. The buttock releases toward the back foot. From the back foot, I'm uprighting my head. From my back foot, I'm anchoring so that I don't overload the front hip. Breathing into that back leg, breathing down into that right foot. walk the feet in, release the arms. Stand in samastiti. Let the breath recover. Let eyes, ears, tongue soften. Release the glutes. Release the quads. Release the lower back. Release the lower abdomen. Let the breath drop down into the pelvic floor. Upright the head and upper spine. More than pulling the shoulders back, which is a good idea, but more than that, try to pull your shoulders wider apart. Try to widen first and then move the shoulders a little further back. That way when you pull the shoulders back, you're not just pulling the shoulder blades together in the back, which is a very strong tendency. Grab your block, put the block in front of you and off to the right, where it's handy. If you're working on the jumping part, just make sure you don't put it where you're going to kick it with your ankle and hurt yourself, especially if you have a wooden block. Arms forward, knees bent. So when you bend the knees here, you want to make sure the knees roll out. And then when you move the feet apart, the knees should stay out. Pelvis uprights. Then turning to the right. So your right knee is going to stay bent here, so don't worry about straightening that leg. You can begin to stretch that left leg, stretch the arms, and then start to sit with the right leg, right hip. And as you're doing that, you're stretching, reaching with that left hand. So it's like or left leg rather. So it's like you're trying not to let that left foot lose any of its weight as you're clearly shifting the weight more to the right side. Then you're going to bend down, put your block right alongside your ankle, brace your right knee with your arm. Make sure it's the arm supporting the knee and not the knee pushing into the arm. Stretch the left hand away from the head, stretch the crown of the head away from the hand, turn the chest and the head around, and then bend, rotate, and reach that upper arm away from the back foot, and reach the back foot away from the upper arm. Chris, try and sit a little lower with your right hip. Try to go down more. Yes. Push into the outer right heel and keep turning that right thigh bone out, and then you should feel your pelvis automatically start turning more toward the ceiling. Then reach the top arm, reach into the back leg and come up, and then reverse everything. So maybe the most important thing is the left thigh bone should rotate out. Both thigh bones should rotate out, but it's crucial that that left knee not roll in as you bend the leg. And then you're bending around the left hip. Use your arm to brace and stabilize your left knee and thigh bone. Use your right hand to help upright the head and to turn it, and then add the stretch of the top arm. You want to push more into the outer left heel. Try to drop that buttock down and back. And that should allow the pelvis to rotate more to the right and toward the ceiling. So you want your twisting motion to feel like it's coming from the left side of the pelvis first. And you're going to reach that top arm, reach into the back leg and come up, turn the feet in, step or hop the feet in. And then one more forward bend with your hand support, your knees straight. Now at this point, if your hamstrings are really tight, if you just simply, don't get even, let's say you don't even get to 90 degrees, let's say that's your forward bend, like where you need something like this, which is fine, it's where you're at. Now what I'd like you to do, for those people who can't bend forward as easily, don't have that available to them, go ahead and bend your knees to drop the trunk down more. Just make sure that when you bend your knees, you keep supporting your low back. Because the tendency is that when you bend your knees, you tend to hyperextend the lumbar, and then that will not feel good at all on your back. And so even though you're lower, it's a worse position for your back. So you have to make sure that you upright the pelvis, you use your intra-abdominal pressure to stabilize the back as you lower the trunk down further so that you don't hurt your back. And if you've done the best you can and you start feeling it in your back anyways, then come back up into your scaled back version here. Don't do anything that's painful. Otherwise, hold the posture a little longer. Let eyes, ears, tongue soften. Let the breath recover. So you want it to be a posture that actually helps you to recover and not one that just creates problems and stress. So if you struggle with this posture, it's not going to function for you the way it functions for someone who has an easier time with it. In which case, you don't hold it as long and you come out and you repeat more often. Good, go ahead and come up. Careful coming up. Good. So we'll add a downward dog here. You can squat down into bear and then adjust the distance between your hands and your feet for downward dog, and then stretch the legs. And if you feel like you need to come out, just come out whenever you need to. Just bend the knees and come down. Good, bend the knees. And then lie face down. Or lie on a bolster face down. whatever position will allow you to relax your lower back. So if you can't relax your lower back in this position, then take a blanket or a bolster and lie over that. The bolster is particularly useful for people who have a lot of hyperkyphosis. So if you're very rounded in your upper back, hopefully you know who you are, then the bolster will make a big difference for you, and it'll be a much more effective posture for you. You just have to make sure you go off enough to get your head down, or you add support under your head if the head doesn't reach the floor. So that can work. Elbows out to the sides, a little higher than the shoulders, forehead is down, knees rolled apart. And then breathe into your back. Now I want you to leave your head on the floor, but push a little bit with your hands and lift your shoulder joints away from the floor. I'm just going to repeat that so that, because it's not something that I don't typically cue you this way. I want you to leave your head on the floor and then push a little with your palms down and try to lift your shoulders away from the floor. So it's like you're trying to bring your shoulders higher than your head, which you can't really do, but that's the direction that you're going in. The head, meanwhile, rests. The neck should be able to completely relax. Your low back should feel nice and open. You're breathing into that. You're opening it up even more with your abdominals, with your intra-abdominal pressure, with your diaphragm. Eyes, ears, and tongue all softening. Very good. Now, bring your hands alongside your chest, and then you can push your abdominal muscles into the floor or into the bolster if you're using the bolster, and then lift yourself up so you end up in a kneeling plank. And you can remove the bolster and then squat back. So this is the prone squat that we were doing earlier, keeping a neutral spine. And as always, honoring the knee. If the knees don't bend that well, then that's your limitation. That's what dictates how far back you go. Keep the chin tucked in, keep the neck long, crown of the head lengthening forward. And then wherever you end up, whatever distance you have left, space you have left between your forehead and the floor, put a block or a half dome there and fill that space so your head can rest on the block. Then keeping the head on the support, once again push your palms down and lift your shoulders away from the floor, lift your upper arms, your elbows, your forearms. So really every part of the arm other than the hands is lifting up as though you're trying to lift it higher than the head. Eyes, ears, tongue, throat, jaw, all soft. And bring your hands towards your knees. With your arms, lift your head up, lift your trunk up, sit upright, and you can stretch out your legs. Sit in Dandasana. And for now, even though you might need more height to sit totally upright, don't take any height because we're going to be working with the arms this way and the height will just be, will just interfere with that. So if, in other words, you can't get the pelvis fully upright, then whatever angle the pelvis is at, then your arms would kind of drop in the line of the trunk that way. So if you're more upright, your hands are going to be more directly alongside your hips. If your pelvis is tipped more back, your hands might be a little bit further back. You're going to end up taking your hands further back anyways, so that's not a problem. So you upright the pelvis as much as you can. Then you bring your hands back with the fingers pointing forward until the heel of the palm just won't quite reach the floor anymore. And then instead of taking, so then you're going to try to bring the heels of the palms down, but not by leaning back, but instead by keeping the pelvis, the trunk, as upright as you can, but pulling your shoulders back and reaching the heels of the palms down without the pelvis and the trunk tipping back with them. So it's going to feel quite stretchy through your fingers and your forearms and maybe even up into the upper arm. And your legs, meanwhile, are working like crazy. Your abdominal muscles are working like crazy. Your pelvic floor is working like crazy to try to hold you upright so you don't fall back onto your hands. And let's just do one more round here. So bring the hands a little further back again, just until the heel of the palm can't quite reach the floor. And then keeping the pelvis and the trunk upright, pull the shoulders back and reach the heel of the palm down again. Then release the arms, stretch them forward for a couple breaths. And then go ahead and bend your knees and lie down on your back with your knees bent. Put your pelvis up on a block. And then that should take the pressure off of your low back. So just enjoy that for a minute or so. You can adjust the skull, tip it more forward, open up the neck. So you might find that with the work that you just did in particular, that you've stretched open the chest enough where you feel your shoulders drop to the floor on their own. Like I feel, compared to how I normally feel in this position right now, I feel my shoulders really sitting into the floor more than they usually do even. In any case, try to get the shoulders to be more on the floor, the back of the shoulder to be more in contact with the floor. And then start to push the shoulders down and lift and open the uppermost part of the chest. When you do that, as with any back bending action, there's a very strong tendency to push your rib cage forward. So notice that tendency. It's going to be there to some extent or another for everyone. So notice that tendency, keeping the shoulders anchored, keeping the chest open, let those ribs drop a little. If you find you're able to do that, And assuming that you don't feel any strain on your low back, that's usually a good indicator that you're able to lift the pelvis higher, in which case go up a little higher, make the brick a little higher. The low back should still feel fairly free in this position. So if you've raised the block and now you feel pressure on your low back or pressure on the back of your sacrum that wasn't there before, that is threatening to become a problem, then you should go back down to the lower height. Assuming you don't feel that pressure, then keeping the shoulders back, keeping the chest lifted and open, go ahead and stretch out your left leg. And watch that the leg doesn't drag the pelvis away from the rib cage and stretch your abdomen and arch your low back. So if you feel that happening, then you can keep that left knee a little bit bent. In other words, not move the leg out as far, and keep a connection between the rib cage, the pelvis and the rib cage that protects the back, and requires then that any stretch of the leg come from below the pelvic rim, which means front of your hip, hip flexors, upper quadricep, even the lower part of the psoas. And you're just using the stretch of the leg and in large part the weight of the leg to do the work for you. Keep the shoulders back, keep the chest open. If you raise the chest a bit more, you may find that allows you to stretch the leg a little further. Okay, bring that foot in. Consciously connect the pelvis and the ribs on the right side, and then start moving that foot out, stretching that leg out. Raise the chest a little, drop the ribs. Remember, you should not feel like this is putting stress or possible strain on your low back or on your sacroiliac joints. So if you feel that that's happening or that's in danger of happening, then don't stretch the leg out that much or don't even stretch it out at all. Once you learn to stabilize, you can stretch that leg, open up the hip, no problem, you don't feel anything in your back. But that ability, that skill needs to be in place before you can do that. So if that's your situation where you're finding it's a lot of work for you to even stretch out one leg and you're even a little tentative with that, then do not go to the next part. You're going to bring the right foot in, everyone. And then you're going to either repeat single leg, first on the left, so you can bring that left foot out. Or you can try stretching the right leg also out, so both legs are stretching at the same time. You need to be extra careful when you're doing this with both legs. That stabilization needs to be increased even more when you do this with straight knees. So if you feel any problem with that, any uncertainty around that, then don't worry about it. Just stretch the left leg, hold that for a few breaths, then switch, stretch the right leg, hold that for a few breaths. And then go ahead and bring both feet in. Re-anchor anchor the shoulders, stretch open the chest, drop the ribs, lift your feet off the floor, stretch your legs straight up toward the ceiling into Viparita Karani. Push your shoulders into the floor, raise the upper chest, drop the lower ribs, breathe into the pelvis, anchor the pelvis to the block, reach the legs up from there, reach the feet up from there. Keep supporting your back with your diaphragm, with the abdominal muscles, with your intra-abdominal pressure. Keep stretching the legs, reaching with the legs, anchoring the shoulders, opening up the upper chest. Once again, if the hamstrings are very tight, you'll be struggling to keep your knees straight here. So for those of you who struggle to keep the knees straight, it's fine. Every once in a while, go ahead, let the knees bend, roll the knees out a little, take some pressure off of the hip flexors, but then gradually try to stretch the legs again. Hold that for a few seconds, or longer if you can. Then when you get too tired, bend again, and repeat that. If the hamstrings stretch pretty well, that will be less necessary. You can just keep the knees straight the whole time and keep working on the activation of the legs here. Soft eyes, soft ears, soft tongue. Try to keep your chin down a little more. Good, then bend the knees, bring the feet to the floor. Now if you did raise the block, lower it again. Then join your feet, let the knees separate in Baddha Konasana, Supta Baddha Konasana. Supta just means lying down. Supta like supine. Baddha means bound. Kona means angle. So it's a bound, or a lying down, a reclining, bound angle posture. Legs are at an angle, it's bound at the feet. The heels in particular. You can press the heels a little here and lengthen along that line of the thigh bone. toward the chest. You can give a little bit of pull with your hands on the front of the lower leg here, not too much, but whatever amount of pull in you give, you want to be able to match that with intra-abdominal pressure pushing out. So the net effect of that is deeper groins and more space in the lower back. And then maintain that intra-abdominal pressure as you lower your feet down. And take out the block and come down. And you can add some height under your head if you want that, need that. So remember what the height is for. Why would I take a height under my head, or why would I not? And the height is so that when your head goes back, if you have any hyperkyphosis, which most of us do, that the head position doesn't drag the rib cage up and create an arch in the lumbar at the thoracolumbar junction. So when I raise my head, it compensates for that tension in my upper spine and allows my ribs to stay in contact with the floor. And how much height I need will just depend on how tight I am in the upper part of the spine, how much of a hunch I have. Also, I want to feel like my forehead slopes down toward the chest and that my chin isn't pulling away from my sternum. So the height also helps to give length to the back of the neck, which is often lacking. So once I have the head in position, I can adjust the shoulder blades down and apart, can release the back into the floor, then stretch out my legs. If I've adjusted all that as well as I know how to, and I still feel pressure or pain in my low back, then you can keep the knees bent, or better still, put a bolster under your knees so that your legs can rest with the knees supported that way, so there's still a little flexion in the hips. That will take the pressure off of the low back. I recommend that if you don't have any low back issue here, that you do it with your knees straight and that you don't use a bolster unless you really need it. Check that you're lying symmetrically. Make any other last adjustments. And let your eyes close. Let your eyes close and begin to relax. And to go inside. Start by lying in a comfortable position. And make sure that it's a position or a posture where you'll have the ability to be there for at least 5 minutes, and one in which you won't be distracted by physical discomfort. So arrange yourself in such a position or such a posture. And then consider the following thought. Approach the posture, if you will, with the following thought. That I've made my best effort. After your yoga practice or your movement session or your gym workout or even just your work day, approach the posture with the thought, I've made my best effort. And having made my best effort, can I allow myself the freedom from any further effort, trying to do more, trying to achieve more, trying to accomplish more, trying to become more? And can I, even for just a few minutes, allow myself that freedom from trying to do more? And then consider the following shift of perspective in the posture. Consider that perhaps you can shift your point of view in the posture from the one doing the posture to that of simply an observer. The body and the mind do the posture, and you are simply an observer to that. And that gives you a certain distance and more ability to see the body and the mind objectively. And then as an observer, begin to notice the sensations that are manifesting as the body and the mind relax. For instance, there's a sensation, there's a feeling that the facial muscles and facial skin, that those tissues are softening and falling to opposite sides of the face. So it's just a feeling, just a sensation that manifests. And as that feeling manifests, where it feels as though the right half of the face is falling to the right and the left half is falling to the left, just notice the feeling, notice the sensation as it manifests. Be aware of that feeling as it manifests. There's a feeling as though the inner corners of the eyes are becoming softer and deeper. As that feeling manifests, you're aware of the feeling, just an observer, and as an observer aware of the sensation of increasing softness and depth in the inner corners of your eyes. There's a feeling of the tongue relaxing from its tip all the way to its root in the throat. The tongue feels as though it's becoming more relaxed. There's a feeling of the throat softening. It's as though the walls of the throat are relaxing away from the root of the tongue. And as those feelings, those sensations, as they manifest, you're simply aware of the feeling. It's not something that you're trying to do. It's not something that you're trying to achieve. It's not something that you're trying to make happen. It just happens, or at least it feels as though it does. And you're aware of that feeling. There's a feeling of the jaw relaxing, of the space between the upper and lower jaw bones increasing. There's a feeling of the space between upper and lower teeth increasing. And there's a feeling that more depth and space is manifesting in the inner ears. And as those feelings manifest, the feeling of the jaw releasing, and the depth and space in the inner ears increasing, as those feelings, as those sensations manifest, you're simply aware of the feeling, simply aware of the sensation as it manifests. There's a feeling of the creases of the groins softening and deepening. It's as though the skin of the groin is releasing deeper into the space near the inner upper thigh bone. And as that feeling manifests, you're just aware of the sensation, softening and deepening in the groin. And then a feeling as though all of the contents of the lower abdomen and the pelvis, all of the pelvic and abdominal organs are relaxing and then settling into the back of the body. And as that feeling manifests, you're aware of the feeling, just aware of the sensation. And you notice also that somehow the breath settles, the energy of the body settles. That feeling also manifests. And you're aware of that feeling, the breath settling, the energy of the body settling. The body begins to feel more calm, more at ease. And then there's a feeling as though the brain relaxes. The brain seems to relax and settle into the back of the skull. And as that feeling manifests, as though the brain is relaxing and settling into the back of the skull, you're aware of that feeling. And you're aware of the extent to which the mind also settles. And there's a feeling that on some fundamental level, the body and the mind and your perspective as the observer seem somehow fundamentally more at ease with yourself. As that feeling manifests, that feeling that I'm at ease with myself, you're aware of that feeling as it manifests. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Start to take slightly deeper breaths. And once you're aware of your breath again, then when you're ready, allow the eyes to open. And once you can see and feel that you're breathing normally again, then bend the knees and roll onto your right side. And pause there on your right side for just a few breaths. And with the help of your arms, lift the trunk upright and sit upright in a comfortable position. Namaste.